I'm Edie Lush, and I'm here at the Hub Pavilion in Davos. Very pleased now to be joined by Simon Zadek. I said that right? Yeah. Zadek, visiting senior fellow at Harvard, and also founder and until very recently CEO of Accountability. So you're going to talk me through the Valley of Death. Where are we?
Yeah, well, the Valley of Death, is originally a kind of technology valley story of, great innovations, good proof of concept, and some where the capital markets don't deliver in the scale-up process. So well known on the West Coast and elsewhere, all the way to Shanghai. The Valley of Death at Davos is sort of similar, but perhaps a little bit more problematic. You get the best brains in the room, you get the most powerful CEOs and ministers, you get some of the Nobel Prize laureates from anywhere and everywhere, you get McKinsey to crunch all the data, everybody's there and committed and willing, and yes, water is a crisis, and yes, climate is a crisis, and it's all important for business. And then they talk about what to do, and the answer is, why don't we do a case study, or a pilot, or a manual, or a set of guidelines, or a new code, or another process. And these are amazing people. This is not a cynical view about people in the room or on the Magic Mountain, but it's a moment where people are stepping back and going, we get it, but are really quite unsure as to what to do about it.
Because a lot of people seem to be talking about sustainability. Everybody says that it's not only important for their business, but they know it's important to the world. So what's happening? Why aren't we seeing more actual action?
It's a kind of sort of end of empire moment, when sort of somebody's got the violin, except here it's snipers on top of the hotel, so it's a slightly different model. I think people are frozen by the complexity. And the complexity isn't just an intellectual complexity. So an example would be, we know that capital markets will not respond adequately to the incremental changes we're pushing at them to factor in social and environmental issues. We know that capital allocation is the key to how we deal with sustainability going forward, and every business CEO here would say the same thing. But if you look at attempts just to do fairly minor changes within the capital market, i.e. the investment community over the past 2 years, the real answer is, well, if you touch us in New York, we'll go to London. If you touch us in London, we'll go to Shanghai. That the complexity and the interrelatedness, the complex of the vested interests and the incumbent players leads people just to kind of give up, whether you're Obama or whether you're Greenpeace.
Right. So you can give me an example of where we've seen perhaps this Valley of Death kind of taking place with somebody that you've seen maybe at Davos, if you can name a name.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the naming names, but let me give a sort of an upside story as well as painting a problem or a challenge. So last year there was a large private meeting about water, and I won't regale the data on water. We all know 50 to 60% of the population within 15 years will live in water-scarce environments, and so on and so forth. It's water that we're going to run out of long before we run out of oil or clean air. So water is the critical variable within the nexus of climate, energy, food, and so on. And last year we had some absolutely fantastic analytics that had been done by various consultancies, and finally we had global leaders really getting what the problem was. And that had taken 15 years. We shouldn't kind of underestimate what it takes to get people to kind of get the problem. And we had that sort of let's do a case study moment. Reel forward a year, and there was a kind of a repeat of the event a couple of days ago that I attended. And actually I thought it was very interesting that somehow a combination of the World Economic Forum, some of its partners, collaboration with some other players, the leadership, both of one or two very specific CEOs in companies, and crucially realizing that engaging progressive governments on the ground were going to really move the process forward, led us to hear very interesting progress in Jordan, some really interesting moves in one or two regions within India, and some really interesting moves in South Africa. And so the Valley of Death is the problem. And it's only arrived now because it's only now that people get the problem and are confounded as to where to go. And now, in a way, the innovation machine needs to take over. And the innovation machine needs to be partly in the business innovation area, more codes of conduct, more compliance, more disclosure, even though I built and ran an organization called Accountability, will not deliver the results that we need. Clearly we need new types of markets, we need new types of businesses, and we need capital markets that will allocate capital long term for businesses of that kind, which is a huge challenge. And then we're beginning to see, the sort of the re-emergence of the importance of the state. I mean, if you were here 3 or 4 years ago, you would have heard people going, state? What state? I mean, this was before they noticed China. And they were going, free market is fine, business innovation will do the job, consumers are supreme and will make the right decisions, all of which have tinges of truth, but are clearly only part of the story. And I do think in the last few years we have seen a re-understanding by leading CEOs of the critical role of the state in the economic jargon, internalizing the externalities, pricing water properly, pricing carbon properly, ensuring that distortions in the market don't lead us into a ditch. So we had Peter Brabeck, the chairman of Nestle, who's taken a leadership role within the business community around water at the end of the water session that I was alluding to a couple of minutes ago. On the one hand going, great, and businesses are wonderful, and aren't we doing some interesting things? And then frankly going, but the reality is, on the ground, without the right kinds of public policy, we're not going to move forward.
Goodness, all right. From the Valley of Death out into the Hub Culture Pavilion. Thanks very much for joining me, Simon, and I'm Edie Lush.
My pleasure.